My name is Thora Massey, and this is the story of how my own son hurt me with just one sentence in front of a big room full of people. People I thought were there to celebrate our family. I will never forget that night. It feels like it's been sewn into my heart forever. The big hall was filled with sparkling chandeliers, soft music, and people laughing happily. I sat quietly at my table with my hands folded in my lap. I felt so proud just to be there. I had worked so hard for this wedding. I spent over $150,000 of my savings to make it special. That money wasn't just cash to me. It was years of work, time I gave up, and love I had for my only son. I wanted to give him the best start to his new life. When my son Jasper stood up to speak, I held my breath, waiting for the moment I'd been dreaming of. There he was, my boy, standing tall in his black tuxedo, smiling with a microphone in his hand. I told myself that even though I had been ignored during the wedding planning, this was going to be the moment he would tell everyone that I was his proud mother. I sat up straighter in my chair, feeling the scar on my neck tug as I lifted my chin. I wanted to be ready, but the words that came out of his mouth weren't for me. I want to thank Bianca, he said, looking at the younger woman standing next to my ex-husband. She's been like a mother to me. Actually, she is my mother. She's the reason I am who I am today. The guests clapped loudly. Glasses clinked together. Bianca put her hand on her chest and pretended to fight back tears. Then, almost as if he remembered me at the last second, Jasper waved his hand toward me. And of course Thora, he said. She helped a lot around the house. Always kept things tidy. She's like family. Really, she was like the housekeeper who kept everything running. Some people chuckled. His words cut through me like a knife. My son, the boy I carried, fed, clothed, and worked so hard for, had turned me into a maid in front of his wife, her family, his friends, and even my ex-husband, who sat smirking. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I felt people's eyes slide over me. Some looked confused, some looked sad for me, and some didn't care at all. My cheeks burned, but I would not let them see me break. I sat up straight, smiled just a little, and swallowed the pain in my throat. Inside, I felt like glass shattering into a million pieces. I didn't hear the rest of his speech. It became background noise. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the room, but all I could hear were his cruel words. He had rewritten me. My son made it sound like I wasn't his mother, like all my sacrifices didn't matter. So I did the only thing I could to keep my dignity. I stood up quietly, smoothed my dress, and walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of anyone. I didn't ask him why. I just walked out into the cool night air, away from the music and the people, and let the quiet wrap around me. But as I crossed the parking lot, my heels clicking on the pavement, a storm started to grow inside me. He thought he had silenced me. He thought I was buried under shame. What he didn't know was that I had the power to tear down everything he had built. That night, with tears in my eyes but steel in my heart, I made a silent promise. If he could deny me as his mother, I would show him in a way he'd never forget exactly who I was. Before I go further, I want you to walk with me in this story. Where are you watching from? Have you ever given everything to someone and been hurt in return? Share your stories. I want to know how many of you have felt betrayal like this. That night, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers hurt. The lights of the banquet hall faded in my rearview mirror as I drove into the dark, empty road ahead. My dress smelled faintly of perfume and champagne, but all I could feel was the humiliation clinging to me like a heavy cloud. She's like the housekeeper, I whispered to myself. His words kept replaying. That was how my own son described me after I spent 62 years building my life around him. After I gave up my savings, $150,000, to make his wedding beautiful. He had no idea what I had given him. The silence in the car was so heavy it hurt. I didn't even turn on the radio. I wanted to hear myself breathe, even though it was shaky. Memories flashed in my mind like an old film. I saw myself years ago, working long days cleaning other people's houses so my son could have shoes that weren't falling apart. I remembered staying up late after double shifts, helping him with his homework even though I was exhausted. I thought of the day I sent him to law school, every sacrifice I made, telling myself it would be worth it to see him stand tall in success. And then I thought of the wedding. I had written every check with love. From the flowers to the music to the food. Everything was my gift to him. $150,000. That number echoed like a curse in my head. I had given away my security, my retirement savings, everything I worked a lifetime to earn. For a moment I thought would bring us closer. And in return I was erased. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't gentle tears of sadness. They were hot, angry, bitter tears. I thought about every dollar I had spent, how it had bought my own humiliation. Then something inside me changed. That money wasn't just gone. It was proof. Proof of everything I had given him. And one day, that proof would help me take back what was mine. As I drove through the quiet streets, I noticed glowing lights in windows where families slept peacefully. I thought of all the mothers tucked in their beds, dreaming of their children with love. Meanwhile, I was alone, humiliated, and forgotten. But deep inside me, something stronger than loneliness burned. Determination. If my son had stood in front of all those people and called me a maid, then I didn't need to carry him as my son anymore. I parked in front of my house, the same house I had raised him in, the same house I fought to keep after his father left us. I sat in the car for a long time, letting the engine tick as it cooled. That's when I made my decision. Silence would be my weapon. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg for respect. I wouldn't cry for attention. I would act slowly, carefully, and show him who I really was. That drive home was the hardest of my life. But it was also the beginning of something I never imagined. Revenge. People see glory, but they don't know the story. At his wedding, people saw my son standing proud, acting like he built his life all by himself. But if they had seen the early years, they would know he stood on my back, the back of a mother who carried him alone. When Jasper was a little boy, our life was hard. His father, Cyrus, was never reliable. Some weeks he would be there, pretending to be a husband and father. Then he'd disappear, chasing business schemes or other women. I never knew if the rent would be paid or if we'd be evicted. Many nights I sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out, a cup of coffee growing cold, trying to make a small amount of money stretch far enough to survive. I worked anywhere I could find a job. During the day, I worked in an office, answering phones for men who barely noticed me. At night, I cleaned other people's homes. I polished their furniture, washed their sheets, and left before sunrise so no one would ever see me. Then I'd come home to pack lunches, braid Jasper's hair when he was small, and walk him to school, smiling to hide my exhaustion. There were nights I thought I couldn't keep going. One night, I came home from cleaning an office building, my hands raw from bleach, and found Jasper asleep at the kitchen table. He had been waiting for me with his homework. I woke him gently and helped him finish his math problems even though I could barely see straight. That night he hugged me and said, "Mom, you're the strongest person I know." I carried those words in my heart like a medal. That was before the world taught him to feel ashamed of me. Our life wasn't glamorous. No vacations, no fancy clothes, no fancy dinners. Every dollar went to survival. Food, gas, school books. When Cyrus came back, it wasn't to help. It was to criticize me for being tired, for not looking good enough. But no matter what, I made sure Jasper had everything he needed. He might not have had the newest toys, but he had a mother who would have given her life for him. Those years made me strong. Sacrifice became second nature. Dignity was my shield. I never let my son see me break. But I didn't realize those sacrifices were also planting seeds. Seeds that would grow into bitterness when he forgot everything I had done. Seeds grow in silence. Even when people pretend not to see them, they grow. And one day, they break through the ground with force. As I look back now, I see that my sacrifices weren't just the story of raising my son. They were preparing me for the day I would take back what he tried to steal from me. Life has a way of knocking you down when you least expect it. For me, that moment was when the doctor leaned across his desk and said, "Tumor." It was in my thyroid. They needed to test it, cut it, and watch it carefully. I sat there frozen, my hands tight in my lap. I hoped if I stayed still, maybe it wouldn't be real. But it was. The months after were filled with hospital visits, medicine, and cold machines. The treatments drained me. My body grew weak. A scar formed on my neck that would never go away. It wasn't just my body that changed. It was the face I saw in the mirror every morning. a woman I barely recognized. The swelling around my neck made me feel shy and ashamed. I started wearing scarves that I pulled high around my throat, trying to hide from the world. I didn't even want to look at myself in the mirror. But the hardest part wasn't the sickness. The hardest part was what the man who promised to love me forever did. Cyrus, my husband, began to act different. At first, I didn't notice much. He came to see me at the hospital less often, and his phone calls got shorter. Then it became more clear. He stayed late at work almost every night. He stopped talking at the dinner table. Some weekends he didn't come home, and he didn't even explain why. And then one night, he just left. There wasn't a fight. There wasn't even a goodbye. He packed up his things and was gone. Just like that. I knew deep down that Cyrus's love was never very deep, but I never thought he would be so cruel. I was sick and scared, and he left me when I needed him the most. It felt like a knife had cut me, sharper than any doctor's tool could. I wasn't just fighting for my health anymore. I was fighting to survive emotionally, to pay the bills, and to care for my son alone. Jasper, my son, was a teenager then. He was old enough to understand that his dad had left us, but too young to know how much pain that caused me. Cyrus started showing off his new girlfriend, Bianca. She was young, happy, and full of energy. She was nothing like me. I was tired, sick, and covered in scars. Bianca began showing up everywhere. She came to events, smiling and cheerful, while I sat quietly, hiding behind my scarf. Slowly, Jasper started liking her. She had an easy smile, and always said the right thing. She made him feel like his life was brighter with her around. And little by little, I felt my own son slipping away from me. Money became another big problem. My medical bills were huge. Every envelope I opened in the mail was a reminder that being sick was very expensive. With Cyrus gone, every responsibility was on me. Even when my body begged for rest, I forced myself to work. I cleaned floors with hands that shook, working late shifts because the rent and the lights wouldn't pay themselves. The scar on my neck and the pain in my heart were proof of the battles I fought every day to keep my life from falling apart. But the thing that hurt me most wasn't the bills. It wasn't even that Cyrus left me. It was watching my son look at me differently. I could see it in his eyes. He was embarrassed by me. He used to call me the strongest woman he knew. But now he looked at me like I was weak, like I was something to hide. I told myself it was just because he was a teenager, but deep inside I knew our bond was breaking. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the scar on my throat. It was angry and red. I whispered to myself, "They left me when I needed them most, but I'm still here." Those words became my strength. Cyrus could leave me. He could love Bianca, but he couldn't take away the fact that I survived. The first time I saw Bianca in person was at one of Jasper's school events. She walked into the room with Cyrus, her head high and her clothes perfect. She wanted to be noticed, and she was. Even Jasper's friends whispered about how stylish she was. I pulled my scarf tighter around my neck and sank low in my seat. Bianca was everything Cyrus thought I wasn't anymore. She was beautiful, confident, and healthy. And she wasted no time becoming a part of my son's life. She didn't scold him when his grades dropped. Instead, she flattered him. She made him feel important. She wasn't just Cyrus's girlfriend. She was trying to be like a new mother to my son. Jasper liked her. At first, it was small things. She remembered his favorite snacks and gave him gifts for no reason. But then she started doing things I used to do. Helping him with school forms, planning his birthdays, and giving advice he once came to me for. I felt him slipping away more and more. It wasn't that Jasper stopped loving me, but he began to see me differently. Bianca sparkled with confidence, while I was just a reminder of pain and hard times. He didn't like inviting his friends to my small, tidy house, but he bragged about weekends with his dad and Bianca. I noticed how he lit up when talking about her. And I noticed how he looked away when I wore my work uniform or the scarves around my neck. Bianca didn't have to say a word to me. Her power was in what she didn't say. She would smile politely, put a hand on Jasper's shoulder in front of me, and call him our boy, as if she had a right to. I stood there, powerless, as she rewrote herself into his life. I told myself he would grow older and see through her. That one day he'd remember who stayed by his side every night he had a fever, Every time I gave him the bigger portion at dinner, so he wouldn't go hungry. But I feared the truth. Cyrus and Bianca's pretty, shiny life was changing how my son saw me. I was no longer the strong mother who carried him through hard times. I was the woman with scars who cleaned other people's offices to pay the bills. Some nights are burned into my memory. I can still smell bleach and coffee, the two things that kept me awake, while Jasper slept peacefully, dreaming of a future I was paying for. I worked hard to keep everything together. When Jasper got into law school, I cried tears of joy, not because I doubted him, but because I knew what it would cost. Tuition, books, living expenses, all of it fell on me. Cyrus smiled proudly at family gatherings, but when the bills arrived, I was the one paying them. I took extra shifts at my office during the day, but it wasn't enough. So at night, I changed into sneakers, grabbed my cleaning supplies, and went to tall office buildings downtown. I scrubbed floors, polished desks, and emptied trash cans until my back hurt. The money was spent before I even got it. Tuition first, then books, then rent. Some mornings I came home as the sun rose, too tired to move. But I forced myself to cook breakfast for Jasper. I hid my shaking hands under the table, so he wouldn't see. He didn't know that I paid for everything with hours of hard work. I wanted him to believe his life was safe, and that his future was bright, without knowing how much I gave up for him. But my body remembered. My scars stayed red and ugly, so I wore scarves even in summer heat. People stared. Strangers looked twice. Even Jasper couldn't hide his discomfort. He never said a word, but I could feel his shame. Still, I kept going. Every bill I paid was proof of my love for him. I believed that one day he would see it. But the truth is, my sacrifices became the reason he pulled away. He saw me as poor and weak, while I saw myself as strong. He looked at my scars and saw shame, while I saw survival. That difference between how I felt and how he saw me grew bigger every year. But I didn't stop. Mothers don't stop. We break ourselves to build our children up. Now, when I look back, I see that every long night, every scar, every hour I worked was more than sacrifice. It was power. Power he didn't see then but would regret one day. He thought he could erase me from his life, but I was writing a story he could never erase. When Jasper told me he was getting married, I felt a joy so strong it almost hurt. I imagined standing by his side proudly, knowing I had helped him reach this point. But weddings are expensive. Even though I had already given him everything I had, he looked to me again for help. And I gave it. I drained the little savings I had left to pay for his wedding. I wrote checks for the venue, the flowers, the food, the suits. Each time, it felt like I was giving away a piece of my future. But I told myself it was worth it. This was his special day, and I was his mother. The sad thing was, the more I paid, the less I was included. No one asked me about the music or the decorations. I wasn't invited to the food tastings or the meetings with photographers. Cyrus and Bianca were there for all of that. Later, I'd hear stories of how Bianca helped pick the cake flavor, and how she went shopping for the centerpieces. Her name was written into every little detail of the wedding, even the ones that should have been mine. I told myself not to feel sad, not to let it hurt. I reminded myself that I was the one paying for it all, that my love was in every single detail, even if no one saw my name. But little things started to happen, small, quiet hurts that piled up like stones. They were too small to complain about, but sharp enough to leave marks on my heart. One day, we sat together to plan where everyone would sit at the wedding. I looked at the seating chart and noticed my name wasn't on the head table list. I asked about it softly, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my hands trembled. Jasper, my son, cleared his throat and said, "Mom, it'll just be simpler this way. We don't want to confuse the guests." Confuse them? How could my name confuse anyone? I was his mother. But Jasper moved on quickly, talking about speeches and other plans, as if it didn't matter where I sat, as if I didn't matter. Later, I overheard that the bride's family was told Bianca, my ex-husband's new wife, was the one planning most of the wedding. People spoke like she had worked hard for it all, like she had earned that role, not me. The message was clear even if no one said it out loud. Bianca looked better for their image, and I was better off staying in the background. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. Weddings were stressful, right? Maybe I was just imagining things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. I could feel something worse coming, like a storm hiding behind the clouds. Every check I wrote, every bill I paid for the wedding felt like laying another stone to build a house where I was not welcome. I kept going anyway, thinking my love and sacrifices would be seen one day, that money would show them respect. But the truth was like fire under the surface, waiting to burn through. Finally, the big day came. The room was shining like a dream. Golden chandeliers sparkled above us, crystal glasses glittered, and soft music floated through the air. I sat at my table, my back straight, my hands neatly folded in my lap, and I waited. This was supposed to be the moment every mother dreams about. The moment she is honored, the moment her son looks at her with love and says thank you for everything. I waited for my name. Jasper stood at the front with a smile so wide it almost split his face. His bride stood glowing beside him. Her family beamed with pride. My heart swelled despite everything, despite all the times I felt invisible. This was my son. Surely he would acknowledge me. But then Jasper turned to Bianca. "I want to thank Bianca," he said, his voice strong and clear. "She has been like a mother to me. In fact, she is my mother. She's the reason I stand here today as the man I am." The room exploded with applause. People clinked their glasses and smiled at Bianca. Her manicured hand rested gently on her chest as she pretended to cry soft, happy tears. She looked so sincere that people leaned in closer to her, whispering how wonderful she was. And then Jasper turned toward me. "And of course Thora," he said casually. "She's helped so much with the household, always keeping things tidy. She's like family. Really, like the housekeeper who kept things running." Some guests chuckled quietly, unsure if it was a joke. Others glanced at me with pity or confusion before turning back to him. I felt every glance like a sharp blade. Cyrus, my ex-husband, sat calmly. He said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct Jasper's words. He just let Bianca sit there in a false crown, smiling proudly like she had won some great prize. Bianca played her part perfectly, dabbing her eyes with a napkin while people came to shake her hand. She didn't need to speak. Their smiles and admiration told me everything. In that moment, I realized she had stolen what was mine. I sat frozen, hands clenched beneath the tablecloth. The walls of the hall felt like they were closing in on me. The music was muffled, the air heavy. In the very hall I had paid for, in the celebration I had built with my own sacrifices, I was erased. My motherhood was stripped away with a single sentence. My chest ached with the weight of it. I thought of the nights I stayed up working late to pay bills. The mornings I dragged myself out of bed even when I was sick. The checks I signed with shaky hands. And all of it led to this, my son pretending I was nothing. But I didn't cry. I didn't move. I forced a small smile, holding on to the only thing I had left, my dignity. When the applause died down, I stood quietly. I smoothed my dress, straightened my back, and walked out of the hall. No one stopped me. No one followed me. I left them there with their lies, their toasts, their laughter. Outside, the night air was cool, but instead of refreshing me, it stung. The sound of music and laughter from the banquet hall followed me faintly as I walked. My son was celebrating his new life while cutting me out of his. But I didn't go back in. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I walked away with slow, steady steps. Each one carried meaning. Silence can feel like defeat to some. But that night, silence became my first step toward revenge. They wanted me to break down, to cry, to make a scene so they could say, "See? This is why we didn't honor her." But I didn't give them that satisfaction. I held my head high. I walked away gracefully. They couldn't take that from me. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step sounding like a reminder. Jasper had given away his dignity by dishonoring me in front of everyone. But I had kept mine. He thought he had silenced me, but silence is powerful. Silence makes people wonder what's coming next. I left that building carrying the truth, the proof of my sacrifices. They thought they erased me, but I knew better. I wasn't erased. I was just waiting for the right moment to speak. I reached my car and placed a hand on the cool metal, steadying myself. Tears burned in my eyes, but beneath them was something stronger, resolve. My silence wasn't weakness. It was my strategy. When I got home that night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, still wearing my shoes and dress, letting the pain wash over me. The humiliation clung to me like smoke. But after hours of quiet, a new feeling grew inside me. Memory. My eyes moved to the old wooden cabinet in the corner, to the bottom drawer where I had hidden papers long ago. Papers that told a story Jasper seemed to have forgotten, or maybe never truly knew. That house he bragged about, the one he lived in so proudly, didn't just fall into his hands. I had fought for that house. I had fought with everything I had when Cyrus and I divorced. Cyrus wanted it all. The house, the car, even bank accounts he had hardly contributed to. He thought he would leave me with nothing. But I didn't let him. That house was more than walls and wood. It was where I rocked Jasper to sleep, where I patched his school uniforms, where I held our life together when Cyrus left for someone else. I fought hard in court. I remember sitting across from Cyrus as his lawyer smirked, sure I would lose. My hands trembled, but my voice was strong. I showed every receipt, every payment, every sacrifice. And I won. That house was mine. My name was on the deed. My signature was on the mortgage. For years, I worked day and night to keep it. The bills were heavy, the repairs never stopped, but I never let it go. When Jasper grew up and needed a place to live, I let him move in. I thought it was what a loving mother should do. I let him decorate, invite friends, and even speak like it was his house. I never corrected him. I thought letting him believe it was his would give him confidence. I thought it was love. But after the wedding, after he cut me down in front of everyone, I saw it differently. I had given him an illusion. I stood and walked to the cabinet, pulling open the bottom drawer. I dug through old birthday cards, photos, and certificates until my hands found a stack of stiff papers. I pulled them out, opened the folder, and there it was, the truth. The title deed. My name in bold. Proof that the house was mine. Proof that everything Jasper thought was his was actually built by me. A bitter smile crept onto my face. Jasper thought he had erased me, but he was living under the roof I had fought for. That night, I spread the papers across my table. They were like witnesses, whispering the truth only I knew. I no longer felt like the invisible mother who had walked out of that banquet hall unseen. I felt powerful again. I held the key to his downfall. For the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. When I woke up, I sat at the table again, the papers laid out before me like proof of every war I had fought and won. Betrayal wasn't new to me. Cyrus betrayed me when he left during my illness. Bianca betrayed me when she stepped into my life and smiled like she had earned my place. And now Jasper, my own son, betrayed me in the deepest way. I stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. The light was dim, but I could see the pale scar across my throat, a reminder of pain I had survived. And I knew I would survive this too. For many years, I always wore scarves around my neck. I wanted to hide the mark there, the scar. I was ashamed of it. To me, it was proof of my sickness, the illness that almost killed me. It reminded me of a time when my body felt weak, and Cyrus, my husband, couldn't handle it. He couldn't love me when I was sick. Every time I saw that scar, I felt like it showed my weakness. But this time, when I looked at it in the mirror, I felt something different. I touched it softly with my fingers and realized the scar wasn't weakness. No, it meant something else. It meant I had survived. I had lived through the pain, the surgeries, and the lonely nights. Even when I was left alone, I found a way to keep going. This is not my shame. I whispered to my reflection. This is my proof. In that moment, something changed inside me. I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who always bowed her head and let others hurt her. I wasn't the mother who gave and gave until there was nothing left of me. I was a survivor now. I was scarred, but I was strong. I sat down at the table and gathered the papers I had laid out earlier. I placed them neatly in front of me. I didn't know all the steps yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I would not be silent anymore. The same strength that helped me scrub floors at night, heal from surgeries during the day, and raise a family alone would now help me fight a new battle. This battle wasn't about staying alive. It was about respect. It was about dignity. I would make Jasper, my son, and Cyrus, my ex-husband, remember that everything they stood on, every bit of comfort they had, was because of me. I built it all. And if they refused to honor me as the foundation of their lives, I would show them how easily that foundation could disappear. That night, I made my decision. Silence had been my prison for years. I had used it to hide my pain. But now, I would use silence as my weapon. The next morning, I woke up with a clear mind, a feeling I hadn't had in many years. For too long, I had been the quiet giver, the woman who bent down so others could stand tall. That old version of me had left the wedding hall that night and never returned. The woman who got out of bed that morning was ready to act. I started with the papers I had found in the drawer the night before. They were powerful papers, documents with my name written in bold letters. The house title deed. The proof that the home Jasper and his new wife lived in was truly mine. It wasn't just a memory. It was my power. I took those papers to the courthouse and began the process to take back what was mine. I filled out forms and signed them with a steady hand. Soon eviction papers were ready. They were stamped, sealed, and placed in a crisp envelope. My hands didn't shake as I held them. Instead, I felt calm, almost excited. It wasn't long before Jasper and his new wife got the shock of their lives. They had just come back from their honeymoon when I appeared at their front door. It was the house they bragged about online, smiling in photos, writing captions about new beginnings. I stood at their doorway holding the envelope. Decades of sacrifice weighed on my shoulders, but I stood tall. Jasper answered the door, surprised to see me. His new wife stood behind him, glowing from their recent wedding celebrations. "Mom," Jasper said carefully, like he wasn't sure how to talk to me after what had happened at the dinner. I handed him the envelope. "Open it," I said simply. He ripped it open and began reading. At first, his face was confused, then shocked, and finally, panic filled his eyes. His bride grabbed the papers from him, her eyes widening as she read them. "Eviction," she whispered, her voice tight. This is a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. I placed the title deed on the entry table for them to see. My name was printed in big, bold letters. "This house is mine," I said firmly. "It always has been. You've been living here under my roof because I allowed it. But that kindness is over. You have 30 days to leave." Jasper's face turned red, a mix of anger and fear. "You can't do this," he said quickly. "This is my home." I looked him straight in the eyes and didn't flinch. "No, Jasper. This is my home. And you will not erase me while living off what I built." The room grew quiet. Jasper's wife looked between us, unsure what to say. The truth was there in black and white, impossible to argue. For the first time, Jasper saw me not as his quiet mother, but as the woman who had built the life he took for granted. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the wooden floor. Behind me, I heard their voices rise, confusion, anger, desperation, but none of it touched me. I had taken the first piece from them, and I knew it would not be the last. As I stepped outside, the sun touched my face. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. My silence was over. My revenge had started. Taking back the house was just the first step. It tore down the illusion that Jasper was standing on his own feet. In reality, he had always leaned on me, and I knew it. Over the years, I had been the secret helper behind his comfort. I co-signed his bank accounts, paid bills he didn't even know about, and made sure money was there when he needed it. Now it was time to pull away each string, one by one, until he was forced to live without me. The first step was the joint bank account I had opened for emergencies. I had been putting money into it for years, quietly helping him whenever he overspent. He had gotten so used to money magically appearing that he never even asked where it came from. I closed that account with a single signature. No warning. No explanation. One day, he tried to pay at a restaurant, and his card was declined. That was my silence speaking. Next were his credit cards. I had helped him get them when he was young so he could build good credit. But he had turned them into lifelines, using them whenever he was careless with money. With one phone call, I removed my name from those cards. Overnight, his safety cushion was gone. Then came the bills I had been paying secretly, his car insurance, his old student loans, things he thought had disappeared. I stopped paying. Suddenly, he had to face all the things I had been quietly protecting him from. But this wasn't just about Jasper. Cyrus, too, had enjoyed the benefits of my silence for years. Even after he left me during my sickness, even after he flaunted Bianca at family events, he still leaned on me financially in ways he thought I wouldn't notice. There were accounts from our marriage, old agreements, utilities, and debts he thought I'd never bother with. I began pulling those threads too. The man who once looked so confident, who thought he was untouchable, began to feel the walls closing in. Bills came unexpectedly. Accounts he thought were closed started asking for payments. I didn't yell or threaten. I didn't warn him. I just stepped back and let the reality sink in. Late-night phone calls came, full of worry and urgency. I ignored them. Messages piled up, unread. I could imagine the fights in their house. Bianca's voice rising as the truth became clear. The life Cyrus had shown her was built on me. As I cut away those supports, his perfect image cracked. I heard whispers about Bianca. She wasn't smiling as much anymore. She wasn't always by his side. Her laughter wasn't as warm. The man she thought had it all was slowly losing everything. This was only the second step of my plan, but already their perfect lives were shaking. Cyrus had always believed he was safe, that no one would ever hold him responsible for what he had done. He left me when I was weak. He humiliated me at Jasper's wedding. He thought I would stay quiet forever, but I had lived through every crack in his perfect image. I had carried all the burdens he left behind. I knew exactly where to hit. I opened old bank records, court papers, and divorce files. I dug up everything Cyrus thought I had forgotten. Back then, during the divorce, he had lied to the court, pretending he was poor so he wouldn't have to pay me what he owed. I knew the truth then, but I let it go because I was too tired and focused on survival. Now I wasn't tired anymore. I was ready for justice. I sent all the proof to the right places. I didn't need to yell or accuse. The numbers told the story. And soon, the past came knocking on Cyrus's door. The effect was fast. He started getting calls from creditors. He received unexpected letters from lawyers. Accounts he thought were hidden were being investigated. His perfect image started to fall apart. The man who looked so strong at church, at family events, at dinners with Bianca, was crumbling. And Bianca, the woman who had stood by him proudly, began to fade into the background. She wasn't as loving anymore. She had been drawn to his fake confidence, his fake success. But as it fell apart, so did her devotion. As the truth started to show, her love for him started to fade too. I heard people whispering. Her voice became sharper when she spoke in public. She was not always by his side anymore. Her laughter sounded empty. She had agreed to be the admired partner of a strong man, not the caretaker of someone who was falling apart. And Jasper, my son, was also falling apart. He was kicked out of the house he thought was his. His credit card stopped working. Bills kept piling up. He was lost and scared. He looked to his father for strength, but instead he saw a reflection of himself. Both father and son stood broken, without the lies and illusions they had built. They were both standing on something that was never theirs. It had always been mine. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to show my face. My silence had become the storm that tore their world apart. Cyrus, my ex-husband, once had a reputation built on lies and fake smiles. Now it was ruined by the weight of his failures. And Bianca, the woman who used to look at me with smug pride, started stepping away from him. She wanted a man who could make her look good, but Cyrus could no longer give her that. Father and son thought they had erased me, but now they were learning the truth. Everything they had was borrowed, and the one who lent it was here to take it back. It was late in the evening when I heard a knock on my door. At first, I didn't move. The silence filled my home, the same silence I felt when Cyrus left me, the same silence I carried home from Jasper's wedding dinner. But this silence wasn't sad anymore. It was strong. I finally opened the door, and there he was, Jasper, my son. He didn't look like the proud groom I had seen at his wedding. He wasn't the polished son of a fancy lawyer anymore, the one who thought appearances mattered more than truth. He looked broken. His clothes were wrinkled. His face was thin and tired, his eyes empty from nights without sleep. The arrogance he once had was gone. He stood there, searching for something he had lost a long time ago. His mother. The mother he had humiliated and pushed away. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. I didn't move aside. I let him stand there, the cool night air wrapping around us both. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." That was the moment I took him back, not into my home, but into his own memories. I reminded him of the nights I worked double shifts to pay the bills. I reminded him of mornings when I went hungry so he could eat breakfast. I reminded him of the times I signed tuition checks with shaking hands, knowing it meant I couldn't fix the leaking roof or buy medicine I needed. I painted a picture for him. A picture of love, sacrifice, and pain. A picture of hope that he would grow into a man who remembered where he came from. And then I showed him what he had given me in return. Shing. A wedding dinner where I was treated like a servant. A lifetime of him choosing his father over me. A father who abandoned him. A woman who had nothing to do with his childhood. I let the silence grow heavy between us. Jasper's tears fell, but I didn't wipe them away. Those tears were his burden to carry. Forgiveness was no longer something I could give so easily. Forgiveness had been cheapened when he chose pride over his own mother. And that's when I realized something important. The real revenge wasn't to punish him more. It was to take back my own power, my dignity, my voice, my life. Whether I forgave him or not didn't define me anymore. What defined me was that I had survived. I had endured. I had risen. I looked at him and said, "You chose who I was at that dinner, but tonight I choose who I am." And I left it at that. Whether he came back into my life or stayed outside forever wasn't my burden to carry anymore. The door was still there, but now I was the one with the power to open it. For the first time in years, I felt free. Now I ask you this. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive him? Or would you let him live with the choices he made? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words could start a deep conversation. If you stayed with me through this journey, don't just leave. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story about betrayal, strength, and taking back your power. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the start of the loudest revenge.